At exactly 2:30 p.m. local time, the skies above the South China Sea turned into a chessboard. An American MH-60R Romeo helicopter was mid-mission, flying with the quiet confidence of a veteran hunter. But today, its presence had set off alarms in Beijing. Within minutes, China scrambled their top attack helicopter, a Z-10, armed and aggressive, slicing through the air like a thrown blade. Its mission? Deter, intimidate, and warn. But the Chinese pilot had no clue. He was stepping into a trap. What began as a flex of muscle would soon unravel into a humiliating intelligence disaster. The Romeo wasn't sightseeing. It was tracking a Chinese Type 039 diesel-electric submarine, a vessel that had been submerged for nearly 48 hours. That sub needed to surface soon to recharge its batteries, a vulnerable moment for any diesel-powered vessel. Think of it like holding your breath. Eventually, you have to breathe. And when you do, the US Navy is there, ears open and sensors hungry. Then came the voice over the radio, robotic and firm. Foreign military aircraft. You are approaching Chinese territorial waters. Alter your course immediately. But here's the critical detail. The Romeo wasn't anywhere near Chinese sovereign airspace. They were operating 50 nautical miles away, well inside international waters. Perfectly legal. Perfectly routine. Perfectly calm, at least for the Americans. The Romeo's crew, 2 seasoned pilots and a sensor operator, didn't even glance at each other. Because while Beijing thought it was posturing, the US was recording. The Z-10's approach didn't threaten the mission. It enhanced it. See, those odd bulges and pods on the Romeo's frame? That's electronic warfare gear, soaking up data like a sponge. Every radar blip, every encrypted whisper, every engine whine, collected, tagged, analyzed. The Z-10 might look fierce, but beneath its armor, it was leaking secrets with every second it flew. What Beijing had launched to project dominance was, in reality, about to hand the US a treasure chest of data on a silver platter. As the Z-10 closed in, it executed a dramatic banking maneuver, cutting across the Romeo's nose at just 500 meters. From a distance, it might have looked like a show of strength. In reality, it was the aviation version of a chihuahua barking at a lion. The Romeo didn't budge. No evasive actions. No weapons raised. Instead, the sensor operator calmly kept his station, laser-focused on the submarine below. The American crew knew something the Chinese didn't. The Z-10 was doing more harm to its own side than to the Americans. Because while the Z-10 was putting on its intimidation dance, the Romeo was still locked onto the submarine. Its dipping sonar, a long cable-mounted sensor, was actively tracking the sub's position. And when the sonar pinged again, it sent a clear message. "We still see your friend." That was all it took. Below the surface, the Chinese submarine panicked. It executed a crash dive, desperate to escape detection. But in doing so, it made itself louder than ever. The emergency descent created a symphony of sonic signatures, cavitation bubbles bursting, metal hull groaning under pressure, internal compartments flexing. The entire US carrier strike group heard it like a gunshot in a library. In submarine warfare, noise is death. And this sub had just screamed. From the surface, the Romeo systems cataloged every second, every sound, every frequency. What was supposed to be an aerial show of force had just backfired in spectacular fashion. The Z-10 had forced its own submarine into panic and handed American analysts front-row seats to the chaos. But the Chinese pilot wasn't finished. No, he was about to make things worse. At 2:48 p.m., after nearly 20 minutes of failed bravado, the Z-10 pilot finally achieved a radar lock on the Romeo. His headset chirped with the sweet tone of targeting success. He grinned. It lasted 3 seconds. That's how long it took for the American side to respond. Not with missiles, not with threats, but with something far more lethal: information warfare. From the skies nearby, an E-180 Growler, America's airborne electronic attack platform, lit up its ALQ-210 jamming pods. Suddenly, the Z-10's radar screen turned into a snowstorm of nonsense. Gone. His target? Now split into 12 ghost images, some flying backward, others vanishing entirely. One contact even appeared inside his cockpit. This wasn't jamming. This was psychological warfare through electronics. A 1990s Russian-designed radar didn't stand a chance against America's digital onslaught. It was like showing up to a laser light show with a flashlight and realizing yours is broken. And things were about to get even darker. As the Z-10 pilot scrambled to make sense of the chaos unfolding on his radar, A new blip lit up on his threat display, one that froze him cold. It wasn't the Romeo. It was the entire US carrier strike group, and it had just lit him up with its spy radar systems. In the world of electronic warfare, that's the equivalent of the Eye of Sauron snapping directly onto you. You don't run. You don't fight. You brace for impact, or pray they're just watching. From the deck of a distant US supercarrier, F/A-18 Super Hornets were already warming up, not to engage, but to remind Beijing that the Romeo was never alone. That calm, unflinching helicopter had the entire Pacific Fleet behind it. In the cockpit of the Z-10, desperation set in. The pilot tried everything, flipping frequencies, boosting radar power, even resetting his system mid-flight. Nothing worked. Every time he found a signal, the jamming was already miles ahead, hopping through the spectrum like a phantom. The Romeo's electronic warfare suite was operating across multiple bands, seamlessly, what US operators call full-spectrum dominance. What the Chinese pilot called, "oh no." Meanwhile, inside the Romeo, total calm. The crew was so unfazed they were probably debating what to have for dinner once they returned to the carrier. Every jamming signal, every radar spoof, every evasive twitch from the Z-10, they were logging it all. In 4 minutes, the Z-10's entire system would be mapped like an open book. Then came the next message: professional, clear, cold as steel. Chinese military aircraft. This is a United States Navy aircraft operating in international airspace in accordance with international law. We will maintain course and altitude. Translation? You're done. But the real damage wasn't verbal, it was digital. Each second the Z-10 lingered, it broadcasted critical intelligence. The communication protocols showed their encryption was over 20 years old. The radar frequencies hadn't been updated since China reverse-engineered old Russian systems. Even the subtle vibrational harmonics of the rotor blades were being recorded, allowing US systems to identify any Z-10 by sound alone, from 50 miles away. The Z-10 wasn't just failing to intimidate. It was volunteering to be dissected. And the worst mistake was still coming. Realizing his radar was blind and his electronic tools were worthless, the Z-10 pilot did what many do when technology fails. He got closer. At just 500 meters, the Z-10 now flew face-to-face with the Romeo. Close enough to see the markings on the American fuselage. Close enough to spot the G-21.50 caliber door gunner, hands resting casually on the weapon, not aiming it, not threatening, just waiting. The message was loud and clear without a word. You're not in control here. Now in visual range, the Chinese pilot began executing thumping, aggressive maneuvers, hard banks, quick rolls, sudden climbs and dives. Think of a boxer throwing feints, trying to provoke a misstep. But with every move, the Z-10 bled airspeed and punished its own airframe. Meanwhile, the Romeo didn't flinch. Its Black Hawk-derived airframe absorbed the turbulence with practiced ease, pulling higher G-loads and maintaining flight stability. The Chinese helicopter was essentially punching itself out, flailing while the Americans sat back and watched. But the real mismatch wasn't flight dynamics, it was sensor warfare. The Romeo's R-47 missile warning system tracked every twitch of the Z-10's airframe. Maximum turn rate, 20 degrees per second. Climb performance, 12 meters per second. This wasn't just trivia, it was target data. Back in the US, engineers would use these figures to program missile intercept algorithms. The Z-10 was writing its own playbook and handing it to the enemy. The Romeo's FLIR camera was also rolling, recording everything in 1080p infrared. Exhaust port temperatures, 450 degrees Celsius. Transmission housing, 180 degrees Celsius. The Romeo now had a heat map of where to aim the next time things got real. Still, the Z-10 pressed closer. Maybe the pilot thought he could force a reaction. Maybe he didn't realize he'd already lost. He likely didn't know that his 23mm cannon, so effective against ground targets, was nearly useless against a maneuvering airframe, especially one armed with a G-21 that could punch through the Z-10's body like paper. Because, let's be honest, Chinese military manufacturing standards aren't exactly known for overbuilding. Inside the Z-10 cockpit, warning lights flared to life like a Christmas tree. The controls began to resist. The helicopter was physically starting to fail. But turning back now? That would be a public admission of defeat. So the pilot did what every frustrated flyer eventually does. He silenced the warnings and pushed harder. The Z-10 pilot was now flying blind, deaf, and furious. Unable to jam, unable to intimidate, and dangerously close to mechanical failure, he resorted to the only thing left in his arsenal: desperation. He attempted to reacquire the Romeo with his fire control radar. Twice. 14 times. Each lock attempt was a gift to the Americans. Every frequency hop, every pulse pattern, every mode switch, all recorded by the Romeo systems. This was more than surveillance. This was reverse engineering in real time. It was like watching someone try every wrong password while your computer logs every keystroke. Then, in a last-ditch move, the Z-10 pilot activated his electro-optical targeting system to try a laser designation. A risky attempt, a bold one, and a disastrous one. Within seconds, the Romeo didn't just detect the laser, it identified its origin, model, and even the firmware version. That one action gave American analysts a terrifying edge. Now, not just this helicopter, but every other Chinese platform using the same tech was vulnerable to tailored jamming. One pilot, one system, a whole generation of Chinese weapons compromised. And it wasn't over. The Romeo sensors continued to build a digital portrait of the Z-10 in crisis. Engine output, 105% of maximum continuous power. Infrared bloom, 40% brighter than nominal. Transmission temperature, redlining. Hydraulic pressure, dropping fast. The helicopter was cooking itself alive, pushing beyond safety limits, flying on adrenaline and pride. All while the Romeo calmly, silently, and mercilessly recorded everything. Each heat signature, each control delay, each structural groan. The Z-10 was becoming a tutorial in how to kill a Z-10. And still, the Americans said nothing. They didn't need to. By 3:42 p.m., the confrontation was nearly over, but the lesson wasn't. The Romeo's dipping sonar splashed into the ocean once again, steady and patient. The submarine below, still being actively tracked, had never escaped. Despite 72 minutes of frantic aerial interference, nothing had changed, except everything that mattered. In the Z-10's cockpit, the pilot stared at a failing instrument cluster, warning lights muted by his own hand. The control stick was fighting back, inputs lagging, the machine itself buckling under the strain. His helicopter wasn't just outmatched, it was dismantling itself under pressure. He hovered his thumb over the radio to report the obvious failure. But what was the point? Ground control was watching the same radar picture he was. They knew. Back aboard the Romeo, calm still reigned. No gloating, no celebration. Just the quiet hum of systems processing 72 minutes of golden intelligence. What had the Americans gained? The exact radar characteristics of the Z-10, its heat signature at various flight profiles, its maneuvering limits, documented frame by frame, its laser targeting systems, now mapped and vulnerable, its communications protocol, cracked wide open. In short, the US Navy now knew how to see, jam, spoof, track, and destroy the Z-10 and anything built like it. And China? They had learned that what they thought was a bold deterrent was actually a self-sabotaging broadcast of military weakness. As the Z-10 limped away, defeated but still airborne, the American aircraft commander keyed his mic one final time, his voice clear, calm, and absolute. This is United States Navy aircraft, continuing lawful operations in international airspace. We will maintain course and altitude. Translation? Thanks for the data. Better luck next time. Because when you bring a second-rate helicopter into a first-rate digital battlefield, there's only one outcome. You don't just lose the engagement, you lose the blueprint to your own defenses. And the final message to Beijing was crystal clear. Stick to knockoff smartphones. Leave warfare to the professionals.